First of all, thank you very much, Bruce, for the introduction. I think we need to thank very much also the organizers of this Congress, which is extremely well attended, and it shows how important the problem is and how concerned we are all. I'm very pleased of that because a few years ago you reminded that. We were in Dubai and we were trying to argue for cooperation, and since that we have had very nice examples of cooperation between all actors, and we'll mention that after. A few words to introduce me. As Bruce said, I've been 23 years with Louis Vuitton. During the last 7 years, I was IP Director Global, and dealing with all the brands of the fashion group division, including Louis Vuitton, but not only, with a team of 40 persons, big team. So now I just joined Lacoste, and I'm extremely pleased to speak about this topic of online counterfeiting for two reasons. First, because counterfeiting has always been a key priority for Lacoste since the very beginning. You probably know that René Lacoste, the famous tennis champion, was the one who decided in 1933 to put a crocodile on a polo shirt, envisioning at that time the power of a brand. So you can imagine that how important it is to protect this brand today. It's also important because Lacoste is willing to be a major player on internet. Lacoste products are available already on Lacoste official websites, mainly in Europe and the US. And we are also very proud to have a lot of fans on Facebook, for example, on our Lacoste page. We are ranked 33 among all brands worldwide, and ranked fourth when you consider the fashion sector. So we are very proud of our 4.5 million fans on Facebook. In terms of anti-counterfeiting organization, we have dedicated team based in Paris, Geneva, and New York. And we are, like all other right owners, monitoring on a very regular basis all auction platforms, and not only those platforms. So we are extremely involved, and I will share with you some further details after that.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to also thank the organizers for inviting us. I don't know about Einstein's drivers, perhaps Einstein's lawyers, but a few words about how internet piracy is affecting the copyright sector. Some of you may have heard about a recent Envisional report, and I think the Envisional guys are here. I saw their stand upstairs, that finds that 23.8% of global internet traffic is infringing, with about with the BitTorrent network accounting for about half of that. So while copyright infringement on peer-to-peer networks remains a serious concern, there's also a massive problem now with streaming sites, leeching sites, direct download sites, and what I like to call cyber stashes. However, it's important to bear in mind that this is not a problem that is purely copyright or an intellectual property, for that matter, problem. It's a problem related to the enforcement of the rule of law online. Can we create an environment where all stakeholders feel safe, not just IP owners, but consumers, participants in social networks, kids, people that would like to launch businesses, etc.? some of the recent events linked to WikiLeaks and the acts of avenging hackers, the anonymous group, and all of the other illegality that's going on the internet, from phishing, fraud, things that we face all the time, really underline this. Now, with respect to the film industry that I work for, we focus our enforcement efforts online on operations that are making huge amounts of money, mostly from advertising, but also in some cases direct revenue that they either ask people to pay and then give them nothing, or that they merely steal their credit card details. And these operators are making a lot of money. Now, you might say to yourself, why not just license these guys? If they've got a workable model, maybe you should license them. Problem is that most of these sites have no desire to be licensed. Why bother paying for the content? And indeed, many of these operators espouse many important values about freedom of speech, privacy, and yet they do not respect the fundamental rights of others. And I'm not only talking about property rights. They don't really give a toss about anybody else's privacy either. So what can be done? Now, we focus, of course, the member companies of the MPA in launching legal alternatives. The best way, of course, to fight copyright piracy online is to provide a legal alternative to the illegal offer. Of course, it's very difficult, and you've heard it said before, when you're competing with free. Criminal actions can be very important, and we'll hear a bit about that from the colleagues on the panel, in particular from ICE. You should know that the gentleman from ICE, you have a lot of fans in the audience. Civil litigation against sites and intermediaries, education and awareness, and of course working on legislative and technological solutions. Now, with respect to civil litigation or civil enforcement online, it can be very complex. The issues in particular with respect to secondary liability come into play. We have seen generally from the case law in Europe that illegal sites are not benefiting from the so-called safe harbors or privileges in the e-commerce directive, very similar to those in the DMCA in the States. However, the e-commerce directive does provide a tailor-made defense to these pirates, and you hear them all the time saying, oh, we're just a search engine. It's used by intermediaries to resist cooperation. They say, in fact, if we cooperate, maybe we'll lose our privilege. There are unclear borders on the notion of to what extent there needs to be monitoring and what the scope of injunctions can be. So there is a need to clarify that. There are complex privacy issues. Just a few more points to conclude. For those of you that are considering civil litigation, there are a number of factors that we've discerned when building a case, particularly when you're looking at sites that are structurally infringing copyright, ones where it is a waste of time to merely send takedown notices. It's really a fool's errand. Is the site actively looking for and enabling access to infringing content? Has it intervened to make the content available to a new audience? Does it have knowledge? And there, of course, with the e-commerce directive, that can sometimes be difficult. What's user perception of the site? Do users think it's making it available? Is there evidence of inducing people to infringe copyright? Are they making money? What's the level of non-infringing copyright on the site? And do they cooperate? And finally, it's interesting to note some things that are going on at the European level. The European AP Observatory that has been mentioned before is doing some really great work. There are a couple of important commission dialogues. And of course, there's an ongoing review of the enforcement directive and e-commerce directive. For those of you that haven't looked at the review of the enforcement directive, there's some very helpful already clarifications in that document. So with that, I'll pass it on.
I actually have slides. I'm not quite sure how to access my slides. Thank you. Perfect. Thank you, Bruce, and the organizers of the Global Congress. We're very pleased to be here. I'd like to take the, you're all set. I'd like to take the few minutes that I have to highlight some of the measures that Google has been taking to combat counterfeit within its principal advertising platform, AdWords. Specifically, I want to discuss the AdWords counterfeit policy that we have and the associated AdWords complaint process, AdWords counterfeit complaint process, that is. As an initial point, I would like to clarify the difference between our AdWords trademark policy and the AdWords counterfeit policy. These are two very different policies, but a lot of times they're conflated, and I think it creates a lot of confusion about Google's stance with respect to counterfeit and AdWords. First, with respect to our trademark policy, while there are some geographical nuances to the policy, in most countries it's generally permissible for ads to serve off of keywords that may be trademarks. We feel this policy is actually beneficial to users. It helps get more relevant info to the user in the process of their search, and its built-in restrictions strike a balance with the trademark owner's rights. To illustrate some of the benefits, I'll just provide an example using one of our own brands. Nexus S is our mobile device. Not as popular as we would like, but nevertheless, if I type in Nexus S as the keyword, and keyword is just a fancy word for the words that you put in a search box on a search engine, I may see ads from a reseller of the device. I may see ads from a retailer who sells accessories for the device, and I might even see ads for a competing device. All of this information we feel is beneficial to the user because it really does inform their search. Now, this is in direct contrast with counterfeit. We don't see any benefit to counterfeit ads. As a result, our counterfeit policy isn't focused on trademarks. The focus of it is really, is that ad promoting a counterfeit site? And if it is, and we get a complaint, then that ad goes down. This is just an example to illustrate this last point. If you look at the example, the keyword is handbag, and it triggers the ad, designer handbags, good prices, high quality bags and accessories, and whatever the URL may be. And if, as you see, there are no trademarks implicated by either the keyword or the ad text. On the face of this looks perfectly benign. But if we get a counterfeit complaint and we find that it's promoting a counterfeit site, then that ad goes down and other measures are taken as well. So this is really just illustrating, this isn't about trademarks, it's about